Hey everyone, it's Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackguard.
We're back. We're back again.
Already. And this is
We're back
episode
again.
225 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
We're talking about a really good episode.
Yeah.
And another episode that also exists.
That wasn't terrible. But we're talking about
No,
what...
it's not terrible. It's
new...
just Game Night is on its own
It's really
league.
good. Yes.
It's its own thing.
It's a new album.
It's a new album.
It's album 74.
Album started.
74, buckle up.
I'm still constantly thinking every time I listen to an episode about how Eugene's on the cover. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I wasn't in this one.
He wasn't in this one, but they did mention him.
They did mention him. Logically, he should have been in here, like, if he was available. Like, that was the only thing I could say about this episode, is if he was available, it would be...
I don't think they mentioned him in this one, but they mentioned him in Renée Renewed.
Yes, that Eugene and Katrina should have been invited to this game night.
Part of me was like, I wish Eugene was in this episode, but the other part's like, there's so much happening.
There's so much happening,
I don't know where he would have gone.
I know, but, like, logistically, like Will was saying to us in our last interview, like, they're best friends, Connie and Eugene. Like,
yeah.
Realistically, if Connie's holding a game night, we've had so much stuff where it's like, Connie... It feels like Eugene isn't allowed to interact with his friends anymore because it's like, oh, you're doing stuff with Buck.
Also, another thing that both Katie and Will said to us about how there aren't that many episodes about them having adult problems.
Uh-huh.
This feels like an episode that Will would have really liked.
Yeah, talking about their adult problems, talking about, difficulties being new parents and stuff like that.
Talking about infestations of insects in a house, which is a thing I'm led to believe people have to experience. Remember when we were in California?
We know that
that Eugene, one room just got invaded by ants.
Yeah, Eugene and Katrina have no short of problems to complain about in terms of dealing with tough parenting issues.
Yeah, they've had all the season finales lately, literally just about their parenting issues.
This is episode 900.
Maureen Suzu.
This is
the fact that he's raising them.
952 game night. It's written by Marshall Younger.
Connie's just like, do you have any idea what it's like raising a teenager? And Whit just side-eyes Maureen Suzu.
Who would have thought that not only Eugene and Connie, but then also Whit would end up also raising teenagers in the house at the same time?
It's the era of raising teenagers. Whit got jealous. He was just like,
do you think it's weird for
teens.
Jason to have new adopted younger siblings?
Yes.
That he's never mentioned once before.
They have his room. Jerry's room was available and Jana's room was available and there was an extra guest room, but we all thought it would have been funny if they just...
How often do you think Jason comes over to eat dinner at Whit's house and he's sitting with Maureen and Suzu and he's
like, so what do you do? And they're just like, what don't we do? And he just scooches his chair.
Well, I'm just thinking about how also one of their kind of adopted nanny mom figures is also Jason's ex-fiance.
Yeah, but Jason doesn't know that.
I know, but
crazy. I want Maureen Suzu to interact with Jillian so bad, I did already when all the adoption stuff was happening. But now we've had the last album. So imagine they're just mentioning oh yeah, our old nanny Tasha, and she's just Tasha,
yeah,
and then they start talking about
had
Tasha,
a different name for it,
and
but
then Jason walks in,
and it's us with the secretary at the embassy, and Jason looks at it and
he's like, that secretary looks a lot like my ex-fiance, and they just start gaslighting Jason because Tasha said please don't let Jason know about all this. But okay, I just love the idea of Jillian and Maureen Suzu all talking about Tasha in a room, and then Jason walks in.
Jillian and Maureen Suzu.
Yeah, think about that combination. They would kill everyone. They would be unstoppable. All three of them on their own are unstoppable. Together, they would rule the universe.
Speaking of Jillian, what happens in this episode, Victoria?
So some prediction stuff out of the way. I did say I thought this episode would be a game night at Connie's place.
Yes.
I did say, though, I thought it'd be, no Jillian. So
we did think Jillian would not appear in the album.
Jillian would not be in the album. Immediately, first thing we get is
thing.
more Jillian.
Not only more Jillian,
but I was like doing a little dance.
Not only is it the first thing, but the first thing is them addressing the previous album also, and I was like, "Whoa, okay, we didn't see that."
Good, I was so happy.
And then it keeps coming up in the episode. I was like,
it keeps coming up. They keep mentioning it constantly. There's so much, not only good Jillian content, good Jason content.
Yeah, he's like, Jillian, I need you to commit federal treason in order to beat my dad at games.
This episode was so good. Okay, so in this episode we have Jason come over, talks with Connie and Jillian, and they basically lay down the plot for this episode.
They're like, we're going to exposit hard here.
Yeah, Connie has like 3 rules when she invited everyone to game night. She made like little invitations. One was no talking about work. No conflict or fights.
No grumbling, yeah.
Yeah, no grumbling, and no talking about, like, bad things going on, which is no grumbling, and no being overly competitive when they're doing the games. Whit comes in.
Connie was like, we are only having fun tonight, and so I'm putting down a no being a human being allowed sign down so that we can have fun. And
Connie's basically like, if you get 3 strikes, then there will be a punishment. And Jason's like, what, are you going to put us in the corner for 15 minutes? And she's like, yeah, actually, I will do that.
And then Jillian threw him under the bus to each individual person.
And then she does. Jason and Jillian, as you can imagine, immediately get strikes because they're Jason and Jillian. There's so many good Jason moments. This is such a good episode. Whit comes in. Him and Jason start talking about, in front of Jillian, all these like family game nights they had and like game activities. When
Jason starts talking about his childhood trauma and why he is the
way he is. His childhood trauma where Whit was overly competitive and never let him win.
The least surprising piece of Whit lore.
It was so good. I was like, yeah, this tracks. And then Whit had on his croquet ball, like Jason painted like magnetic paint. Yeah. But then he also painted like the same magnetic paint on like the little like the little, I don't know, things he put that, like, the
well, no, he put it on the mallet and the ball.
Yeah. Oh, I thought he put it through, like, the hook. He said he put it through
that makes more sense. I think you're right. Yeah, he put it on the wicket and the ball.
Because Jillian's just like, the wicket was, like, it was detracted from the wicket. And she said it in the cutest way possible. I was like, I love Jillian Marshall so much. And so then they're telling this to Jillian, and she's just, like, glowing. She's like, I'm getting all these baby stories about Jason and they're so funny. And
it's such a Eugene moment, like childhood thing from Jason.
It is. And then the ball like wouldn't go through all the wicket stuff. And then Whit's just like, I know you did it, Jason. And Jason's like, how do you know I did it? And it wasn't like Jerry or Jana, which was so nice because we haven't gotten a mention of them in a while. Mm-hmm. And then he's just like, because you had a line prepared. And Jillian's like, please tell me what the line was. And Jason says the most iconic thing ever. And he says, it looks like God didn't want you to win or something like that.
The absolute most church kid thing to say.
So funny. And then we also have our other characters in the episode because we have a small cast in this one, which is very well used in this episode. We have Wooton, who is on the phone with Penny because there's been like an infestation of insects and stuff in their place. And she's trying to figure out what's going on back at their place. Well,
she's there because the exterminator's there.
Yeah, with the exterminator. So she can't come because they did 17 rounds of rock, paper, scissors. And
I was confused because Connie kept talking about partners, and I was like, but there's only 5 of them because Penny couldn't come. And I didn't realize that Penny was still going to play the games and not just be on the phone remotely.
And so then Wooton won rock, paper, scissors, and so he's there. And so we're constantly getting updates in very hushed tones because it constitutes like a problem at home and stuff.
Do you know what this episode made me think of the most? It made me think of Best Intentions in the way that everyone was constantly like...
It is very Best Intentions.
Like the goofiness in general, but the fact that everyone's like, we need to hide from Connie. We can't let her find us because she's the Gestapo right now.
I love it when episodes do that. And I love that it's like... Connie, it feels like it's either Connie, Whit, or Bernard or Tom. It's like never Eugene.
The fact that everyone's like, we need to hide because Connie is on the warpath. We can't let her know we sit. I love the fact that
everyone's scared of Connie when she gets mad.
And that they all end up hiding together and everything.
Yeah, basically. So throughout the episode, people consistently get put in the timeout corner, which is where I made this.
Is it going to be the party they don't know I'm? Let me see what you made. Thank you.
Do you like it? Do you like the little footnote at the bottom? I couldn't make the font smaller on that bit.
Uh-huh. Very nice. Thank you, Victoria.
All my memes I made lately are just taking the piss out of Jason.
I really thought that everyone was going to end up in timeout, and that's when Connie was going to be like, okay, I guess this is a bad idea. But no, she waited.
No, she rides that train.
She really did.
So, like, we have... Oh, there's so many good moments in this episode. So, Jason is frustrated because they're... What?
Whit has the bruise on his head.
Whit has a bruise on his head, but he's not allowed talking about what the cause of the bruise is. And so then they start guessing about it, and Whit gets upset, and then he yells about the bruise eventually later in the episode. Different things have different
Whit was not just frustrated. He was angry about it, and I loved that.
He actually mad.
He actually
and
snapped.
Something we'll talk about next episode.
And then Penny also snapped.
2 episodes. Penny snapped, Whit snapped. Next episode we're going to get into... There's another mad character in that, but Whit was also mad in that episode, so we got like 2 mad Whit episodes in a row, which has made me decide this is the album of Whit rage, so every single episode he's gonna just
the next episode is super justifiable because Whit has like a lot of associated past that would bring that up. This was just Whit being like pecked at until he snapped, and I was surprised. I was like, oh, he's actually frustrated, and I was like, oh, he was mad.
Like, he's yelling. I'm assuming, because we know there's going to be more Isuzu content in this album, he's going to yell at them for not cleaning their rooms. And then something with Olivia.
Suzu, your room is so dirty because it's full of stolen things.
Suzu, you have to return the things you stole. And she's like, no. What's the other thing that's supposed to still happen in there? Right, Buck and Jules fight.
Have a fight.
Yeah, because there's like the Olivia stuff, there's the Mori, Suzu, Emily, and then there's the Buck and Jules fight.
Yeah.
And I think that's
all that we know.
Am I missing something?
Wooton goes to court.
Oh, Wooton becomes Elwood's.
Yes, because game night was the episode we didn't know about. I am nervous about
listening to that episode. I am like fearful.
Penny sues Wooton over the popsicle ants.
Because I'm like a big Legally fan, or Legally Blonde, the musical fan. I don't really care for the movie a ton. But like the musical is everything to me.
Okay, what all happens? What makes everyone snap?
Okay, so Penny snaps at Wooton because she's been telling him to put like his popsicle stuff away forever, and he like let it melt, and that's why there's the infestation. She tells him to get in the corner of the room. He's like, "Yes, ma'am," which Connie tells Penny for yelling at Wooton to go into
she also
the corner
sits in the
of their
corner
house
at home
over the phone, which she does. Whit has to go into the corner when he yells at everyone. And so Jillian and Jason, because I was losing my mind.
2 halves of a whole idiot is what they are.
They're so perfect for each other. So unfortunately, there was never any mention about Jillian's date. With, what's his
Stu Burke.
face? With Burke.
And Marshall did write this episode.
He was just like, I'm going to write it so I'm not in it.
Burke has been invited to the world's awkwardest game night.
He was gonna go, but he wouldn't have had a partner, so he dipped.
Yeah.
So Jillian and Jason go into the like kitchen together. That's basically the place where consistently throughout the episode everyone goes to hide from Connie. And Jason's just like, okay, we're losing like horribly in Trivial Pursuit, which like Whit and Connie did really good at. Penny and Wooten did amazing at because...
Well, they did amazing at Fishbowl.
Yeah. Oh, there was also that line that made me laugh really hard where Penny was first on the phone and she was like, describe everything that's happening to me, Wooten. And Wooten's like, oh, we're gonna play the first game. And he said like, Attack of the Spoons or something like that. And Penny was like, what? And he was like, oh, never mind, Connie's just setting the table. Which I thought that was really funny.
If they played Spoons, I was like, boy, we did not...
he said like Spoon Wars or something like that. And she was like, what's Spoon Wars? And he's like, oh, she's just making...
There was already enough violence going on in this group without having an actual game of spoons being played. That would have been a bridge too far.
That's another part of me is like, maybe it's good that Eugene and Connie weren't in the same vicinity when everyone was losing their minds. They would have just added more aggro tension.
Yeah, exactly. The juice, the juice and the spice.
It would have been so good. They're best friends. So Jason's just like, Jillian, they're killing us out there at Trivial Pursuit. Please, you gotta help me. And then Jillian's just like, I mean, like, I'm ditzy now. I can't use my NSA training. And he's just like, couldn't you though? Couldn't you find a way? And she's like, I think
I don't know how I knew that. That's crazy that was right.
Yeah. And Jillian's just like, I think you should just learn how to adapt and use your NSA training. And then she walks out.
Well, no, that's not for trivia. So that was, you're thinking of Fishbowl.
Yeah. So then they start playing it. And then Jason...
the best scene in the episode.
Is the best scene in all of Odyssey.
It was so good.
So Jason tries to genuinely do it for a second. And then she's like, I don't know. And then he's just like, he starts saying like random associating
It was good
things.
because like the first one was a gimme because he said a real clue, so yes. Jillian actually knew what the answer was she was supposed to say.
Yes, I did think of that.
But then the later ones, it was like...
It was so good. They were just on the same wavelength.
He's actually figuring it out.
He was just like, what's like... What was the radio one?
The study of music on the radio.
Yeah, and she's like, radiology. And he's like, good. And then he's like, when you get your clothes super smooth. And she's like, irony. And he's like, good.
And then the last one with the perfect, like, doing the full circle where he's like, the 18th president. And she's like, Paul Revere. It's funny because...
Didn't she say Paul Revere wasn't...
Well, no, because when the first thing...
No, but wasn't it like Theodore Roosevelt was the first one she said or something like that?
No, she said Paul Revere, and the actual answer was the 18th president. But then he brought that back so she would say that. Yeah. It's funny because...
It was so good.
A month or two ago, Achievement Hunter played Fishbowl charades with Funhouse, and Funhouse was talking about how, like, they were like, we played with Patrick once, and he did such a bad job that he got Hunger Games, and he went, like, and they're like, he was like, that works. And then the other team, literally in the next round, they were like, Hunger Games. They're like, yes. They're like, I can't believe he gave that to... It literally came up immediately, and so that's immediately when I thought, when he was like, the 18th president, Paul Revere, yes!
It was so good. They're such a cute couple. Oh my gosh.
Inside each other's heads. Oh, it's
they're meant for each other.
It was such a...
They're meant for each other.
Such a good scene.
They're meant for each other. And then Connie basically, like, has this moment where she's like, I just need everyone to stop. And she basically says, like, my sink is clogged. I have, like, $1,000 worth of car trouble. Jules is doing, like...
I thought for a second there was going to be, like some, like, full, like, story-related bad thing happening, but then
maybe that will come up. Maybe Jules having a hard time in school will come up. And
she accidentally she pulled a Trump 4 Seasons landscaping with the wedding, which is
that was
legitimately like funny, but also that is actually really sucks for the people getting married.
Yeah, I was like, this is funny. It was funny to me for about like a half second, and then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, I would be upset if that happened to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I totally get why Connie is having like a rough time, and I'd say I'd say in a lot of ways I'm very similar to Connie, just in general, but I really felt it with this episode because there are definitely times where, which I'm also kind of going through one at the moment, which is one of the reasons why I told you.
But you're not going to talk about it for the audience because those are the rules of the episode.
No, I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff, but I'm talking about it to you because you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So just those moments where you're like, I just need a break from all the bad stuff going on. And
but you can do that without completely bottling everything up.
I need other people to take a break too, which, like, that's a good thing to do. I like to practice that. I try to help other people practice that. I'm working on that right now to varying levels of success.
It's one of those hard things to not be hypocritical about, because everyone's like, I want people to rely on me and trust me and let me help them with their stuff. But then everyone's also like, no, I don't want to put people out and stuff like that.
Yeah, like whenever I tell people bad stuff happening to me, I'm always like, I'm sorry, like Nikon.
Yeah.
And
look how that turned out. Don't be like that.
But it's at the same time, like, if you bottle all that stuff up, you're gonna explode.
Exactly. And it was like, as soon as Connie laid down the rules at the start of the episode, obviously that's what it was going to be about. Very funny thing. When Whit first arrived and he had this mystery bruise and he was like, oh, I'm not allowed to talk about it. My thought was that Whit saw the rules and was like, okay, this is a bad idea. And so he purposefully gave himself a bruise on the forehead because he knew that Connie wouldn't be able to resist asking about it. And he purposefully injured himself to bait Connie into breaking her own rules.
I'm honestly surprised she didn't ask about
to realize that it wasn't a good idea. And I was like, that would be so funny if he purposefully like hurt himself just to bait Connie into asking questions and being like, I guess.
I mean, like, first off, I wouldn't force other people on this in the first place. I might say, like, hey, we're trying to have like a chill dinner. Can we just, I don't know. I wouldn't even say it at the beginning. I might.
She was like Twitch
then,
chat,
I'm
like
anxious.
No.
I probably wouldn't.
She was trying to be like Twitch chat, like no venting, no trauma dumping in chat. Except she was like that one clip that went viral of the guy who like went on an angry tirade because the person answered his question about where were you, and he was like, oh, I haven't been around because my mom passed away. And then he went on a whole angry tirade, like insulting her and tearing her up for like, that you're bringing bad vibes, and like that's not how you do it. When
I knew nothing about
if someone says like, hey, how are you doing? The only thing that you should say is, I'm doing fine, thanks. And she's like, you literally asked me why I haven't been around. And he like went on, he was like angry and insulting her for like 3 minutes for answering the question that he asked. And everyone on the internet was like, dude, that was like the most inhumane thing I've ever seen. Like,
that's
no
awful.
Basic human sympathy. It was really bad. But yeah, that was kind of being like, no, we will not talk about it.
Also, I feel like just flat out saying
Connie was being a happy
don't
smiler.
talk about your problems makes you think about all your problems.
Yeah, Connie was being a happy smiler.
She pretty much was. And so honestly, if I was Connie, I would have, when I saw Whit had like a big bruise on his head, even though he was just like, oh, it's no problem. This man has no sense of self-preservation.
It's true.
He's Mr. Rip out his own IV. I'd be like, can you please tell me if you're actually okay? Because when I saw the bruise on his head, my first thought was like, someone spy-related because of everything that happened the last album, like, did something to him.
Oh yeah, someone attacked me and I had to kill them out of self-defense. It's no biggie.
Their
body's in my trunk right now.
There's a chance this could actually be like a very bad, dangerous thing that like Whit's going through, but he'd be like, oh, but I'll ruin Connie's night. I shouldn't say anything.
So Whit.
It's fine. It's fine. I ripped out my own IV and I ran all the way to Connie's house for game night. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you can just put a pause on the rules for like 2 minutes to just make sure your friend and pseudo-dad is okay. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so everyone is in timeout, and it finally runs out. And then Connie is like, everything's bad. I don't want to think about it.
And Connie puts herself in timeout.
Nobody puts Baby in the corner except for Baby.
And then she's like, okay, I'll go in timeout for 15 minutes. And then she snaps. She starts laughing. And I was like, oh no, we lost.
She starts just like ugly laughing about it, where she's just like, starts like snorting and just getting worse and more out of control. And it just felt genuine, and it was cute and sweet.
It was good. And then everyone was like, are you good? And she's just like,
no.
Are you actually going to wait like 15 minutes for me just in the corner before games start again? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, that's so stupid. Let's keep playing games.
It was really good.
She's like, I think I just needed to be with my friends and have like some laughs and stuff, which that's a good thing to do if you're sad. Even if you're like introverted and you're like, I only need to be alone forever now, it's good to just take yourself out of that mindset for a little bit. Like, once you're ready enough to, don't force it before you're ready to interact with other people at all, otherwise you'll probably just cry the entire time.
But wallowing begets wallowing.
Yeah.
As we see, I'm still really glad that they did an episode about that, because it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm surprised that they addressed that with Whit in Silent Night, where he's just kind of like, I'm going to sit in my pile of depression and roll around in it.
Hey, that was me this Christmas.
Okay.
I shouldn't be smiling about that.
Let us talk about the things. So,
5 stars.
Like you mentioned, we talked in our predictions about how we did not think that Jillian was going to show up in this, and we weren't going to address the previous album because there's enough stuff going on. We need time to let it breathe. And then it was like, whoa. Like, we were just saying that that's not going to happen. And then now literally less than 60 seconds into the premiere, including the intro length, they're already getting into it. Like, I love, by the way, how Jason does not know Jillian's agent number, where he's like, Agent 3363, and she's like, that's not my number. And I love that specifically because it shows that Jillian's purposefully not told her number to Jason, because Jason can't
He'll try and look her up or something.
No, because it reminds Jason, I don't know your number, because Jason, you're not in the NSA anymore. It's just like, he just has to make one up. The reason he doesn't know is because he's not in there and he can't find out. And she's trying to like rub that.
Look at the meme. Look at the good meme I made.
Exactly. Yeah.
What if we kissed in the corner of Connie's house while in timeout during game night and we were both NSA agents? No, you're not, Jason.
Yeah, I love, like, literally that exchange finished where she's like, that's not my number. I hit pause to write this note. At the end of that exchange, we were 54 seconds into the episode, and that's including like the intro theme and stuff. So all of that.
Oh, and Connie did the little intro.
We had the intro and that conversation where we've already addressed Jillian and the NSA and Jason stuff. Less than 55 seconds into the episode, I was like, wow, we were so wrong with her prediction.
Such a good episode. This episode was everything to me.
Connie, I was so excited when I heard her super militant game night rules, because I was like, Connie knows how to make everyone have the most relaxed and chill night in the most stressful way possible. We are going to have fun. It's going to be relaxing.
And you're going to like it.
Yeah. We had a sad Wooten childhood moment where...
Yeah, you talked about Winston, where he's just like, every time I got a stain on my clothes, I had to pay my dad, and then I had no college tuition. And everyone was like, real quiet, but just kept talking about the thing they were talking about. And I was like, no one's going to address that.
Connie's like, I'm not even going to give him a strike for that one.
Which, like, was kind of fun, question mark, because we haven't had a Wooten line like that in like a while. That's like classic Wooten content.
Yeah, I feel like there's one relatively recently, but in general we don't get them much anymore.
Yeah, we used to get them like all the time though.
I mean, that was his whole shtick at first, is his mysterious traumatic past. So
man, I want him to have more of them about Wellington.
So like I said before, Whit shows up with a bruise and it's like, I can't talk about it. And I was like, please tell me that this is just a big thing to bit. Even if it wasn't a real bruise, he's like, I just did this with makeup. Like Maury and Suzu
like
gave me
Idaho.
Yeah, they just did this on me to try and bait Connie into breaking the rules and teach her a lesson. And then we find out, shockingly, that Whit is like insanely dangerously competitive. And I was like, no. And I'm so excited about this. And like, I mean, yeah, obviously, have you seen him with Wilson before?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I need to re-listen to just that episode because it was just, oh, it was so good. Can you imagine if Wilson was at the game night? So, there would have been no survivors.
Oh, yeah, because I literally said farther on down here somewhere in my notes, I'll get there. So I said the thing I said before, Jason's line about like, I guess God just didn't want the ball to go through the wicket is the most top tier, so like Christian kid snarky remark to say, like absolutely realistic perfection. I was like, Whit, if Whit was being competitive, obviously, but I was imagining, you know, Jason's trying to crack him. If Whit was doing a good job at not being competitive and Jason really needed to break him, so Jason goes and he takes a bathroom break and he calls Wilson, invites him over because he's like, there's one bait that Whit cannot physically possibly resist, and that's inviting Wilson over to just like put the last screw in Whit's coffin. It would be great. So yeah, Jason is spending the whole time being like, oh, Jillian, come on, please risk your cover and commit treason so that we can beat Whit at trivia.
Against my dad.
It's the juiciest way that this could possibly go. It's so funny. And she's like, no, I'm not. Stop it.
Can I also just say, one of the worries we had with the last album was how Jillian would continue as a character. Uh-huh. And like, this is probably my favorite Jillian episode, possibly. This is her most core version of herself, basically.
It was so good
because we get to see the cover, but we also get to see like her interact with Connie and her friends and Jason and stuff, and it was just like so good. And she was having like a fun time, and it was just like so much of her and Jason
so gleeful about it,
each other, and it was like so nice to see like how they are writing her after the last album and stuff.
When
like she feels like the same character. She feels like a beautiful mix between who we had before and who we got last album, and it's really good. And also, we have like the whole new dynamic with her and everyone else to appreciate who knows her secret. And we have like this new dynamic, which I know you and I wanted really bad when Jillian and Jason first interacted and we immediately started shipping them, where we were like, Jason falls in love with this really dunce character, like kind of ditzy character. But then last album we had like, oh, Jason also loves like smart character. But we also know like between this episode and the last album that she's like genuine ditzy, clumsy moments, which I completely adore. And we got to see in this episode how Jason can also understand the thought process that goes behind the acting of ditzy Jillian. So it's just like, he understands her completely. He knows her personas. They're on the same wavelength. The only ship ever.
So, yeah, it's funny because I didn't really think about it until like at the start of the episode when he was like, Asia and Connie's like, no, we can't do that tonight. Not just because talking about work, but Penny and Wooten are coming, so you can't. And he's like, oh, but like I want us just to be able to interact like without Jillian having to like play pretend. And they're like, well,
and you just know when they're married, even if people know about her secret, she'll just like regularly switch over into the ditzy Jillian persona, and Jason be like, no, Jillian, please, we can't do this right now. She's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
And I was like, oh yeah, I guess out of the 6 people, like Wooten and Penny are the only ones who don't know, so she would be able to be herself otherwise, but then she has to hide it because of that. So I was so unsurprised that Whit was the first person to have to sit in the corner. I absolutely knew he was going to be the first one to go.
I really thought Jason and Jillian were going to be put in the corner before the game night even started.
I loved seeing him crack like that. And then everyone, like I said, I was thinking of best intentions when everyone was hiding from Sergeant Connie and being like, no, she's coming. I can hear her footsteps. And then similar to Jason and Jillian was Wooten and Penny's synchronization on Fishbowl, where it's just like completely random and they just got everything immediately, like rapid fire. It was really great. There's nothing, it made me think of like if I do stuff like that with you, where it's like you're playing with someone where you share like a bizarre thought process or a whole bunch of specific knowledge and references that you can use to shortcut to information that other people are not going to see the connection, and it's like confounding externally, but you can like zip right there.
Especially if you want to talk about a series with someone that has really weird content in it, and you don't want to get into explaining what everything means in front of other people. It's helpful.
Yeah, so
like talking about Danganronpa in public. Those games are really weird.
We got Wooten and Penny did that, and it was like, oh, look at them go. They're so great. They're so in sync. And then Jason and Jillian do the exact same thing, but, you know, it's more impressive for them. And I was like, it's so romantic, honestly, that Jason was able to get inside her head like that. Oh, love them.
He was just like, I get you. And I was just like,
they're drift compatible.
They're drift compatible. Could you imagine? Oh my gosh. Me who's never seen Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim AU, where Jillian and Jason are partnered up. And Jason's like, there's no way I'm ever going to be drift compatible with her. And she's acting like ditzy Jillian. But they are drift compatible. And Jason's just like, why? How is this happening? I don't understand. He's like, am I an idiot? Is she a secret genius? And then he starts like digging through all the records. He's like, I need to know the answer.
Okay, imagine all of that. But also, instead of being in Pacific Rim specifically, it's the big robot from the animated episode of, like, Neon Genesis Evangelion Space Odyssey.
No, I can't think of any Evangelion Odyssey AUs because they'd be too sad. They'd end in everyone dying.
No, I just mean that episode of the animated
I can't think of Evangelion. Otherwise, I'll want to rewatch it, and then I'll be too sad.
So, finally, Connie dumps all her trauma, and everyone's like, okay, we support you and stuff. And it was a really lovely ending. Like I said, the only thing that would have made it better was if Eugene and Katrina had been there, but I'm going to chalk it up to the time frame when it was recorded. And even if they were there, like, realistically, from a writing perspective, it would have been a lot going on, even though it feels like it's very important to me. I could have thrown in a
line where it's like, I invited Eugene and Katrina, but they're busy tonight.
I was surprised that there wasn't at least a line that they were invited but weren't able to make it. Because I feel like they should be there if they were available.
Yeah.
So they certainly should be invited because, like...
Because they're Eugene and Katrina.
So apart from that, I absolutely adored this episode. Great showing of, like, toxic positivity and how you can unintentionally do that because, you know, worrying about trauma dumping on your friends and putting burden on them is not actually good for you, and it's not what they want either because they want to support you. And then we had Whit getting mad and snapping, which is great. We had Penny snapping at Wooten and getting actual mad. Yeah. I was expecting her to, like, snap for a minute and being like, oh, I'm sorry. But she, like, kept going, laying into him. And I was like, wow, we've never seen Penny like this. And I was like, I love this, that, like, seeing another side of Penny emotionally that hasn't come out before.
I feel like she's snapped like that in front of her family before.
Yeah, but she hasn't snapped at Wooten, especially not this drawn out. Like, it might be like you have like a single second, but this was like a whole thing. She kept going.
No, this was like a whole tirade, and then she was like, go in the corner, and he was
sitting
like,
there,
okay.
Michael Jackson popcorn. I really liked it, and then everything with competitive Whit versus competitive Jason was amazing. I was like, this reminds me of like when we do something academic, and then Mom is like, I have to beat you. I have to have higher scores than you.
Me when I went to the fake animatronic shooting range with Mom. And then she was like, I need to beat both.
Exactly, yeah. Me when I did the first aid training like 7 years ago with Mom, and she was like, what was your score? And I was like, I didn't check. I passed. She was like, you need to know what your score is. Do you want to know what you got wrong? And I was like, no. And I'm just being super casual because I knew the only reason she cared was because she wanted to know if she got a higher score than me on the final test. And so I'm like, no, I don't care.
You give me the timestamp for this after. I'm going to play it for her.
It's so one of the funniest things that's ever happened to me.
I'm going to play it.
And then the teacher being like, Tammy, you got 100. And she's like, okay. And he's like, Devin, you also got 100. And we're like, okay.
And she's like, no, not okay.
So yeah, it did make me think of that. And then all the Jillian and Jason arguing, and Jason being like, Jillian, you have to do this for your country. This is the morally...
She's like, I don't have to do anything for you, Jason. I don't owe you anything. She's like, we're not together unless.
No, it was so good that he was like, Jillian, listen, like, I understand this is hard, but this is the morally correct thing to do. And she was like, Jason, I cannot express to you how irrational you're being right now.
She's like, I cannot put into words right now how irrational you're being and how little I care about you winning. And just, she's like, why don't, instead of me blowing my cover, you just try harder?
It was so good because I didn't think about, did see Jillian connect it to the competitive thing until after trivia was over, and he pulled Jillian in. He's like, look, we need to do something about trivia. And all of a sudden it clicked in my mind. I was like, oh, what a great setup. Oh, I see what's going on here. This is so juicy.
And also the fact that, like, Jason's like, I can't win with Jillian. And Whit's like, I don't know what you mean.
He's like,
Jillian's pretty smart.
We did pretty good by ourselves.
And he's just like, you and Connie are cheating because I have a handicap with Jillian. And he's just like, maybe we would have won anyway. Connie
did win Truth Trivia and Trina.
Yeah, he's like, Connie's pretty good at trivia, and Jason's like, I'll kill you.
It was very good. There's absolutely phenomenal season opening, 5 out of 5, hands down for me.
It was so good. We've gotten 2 competitive Whit episodes over the course of the past year, and I need so many more. The
other one being
with him and Wilson.
Yeah.
In the Snow
on and so forth,
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, thinking in my head, I was like, man, if Jason needed to, like, calling in Wilson as a ringer here would just...
It'd be so good. The only things that could levitate this episode, if it had a longer runtime and the Meltzner's and Wilson were invited. It'd be so chaotic.
This is a whole season because everyone breaks the rules and Connie is like, okay, we're not leaving until we sort this out. This house is on lockdown.
Can you imagine? I like to think that, like, Wellington and Wooten somehow would be amazing at Fishbowl. I don't know how.
Yeah.
But, like,
I agree.
They would be.
I agree.
Because Wellington is like the Yugi of Odyssey. He's good at games.
Thing to say.
I really fall out of my chair. We have so little about him as a child.
But we definitely know that he's the Yugi Moto of games, for sure. Yeah, I could definitely see the way that they both reluctantly on Wellington's part, are able to get inside each other's thought processes, just like Jason did for Jillian.
Wooten would be like, we're doing so good, and he'd be so proud, and Wellington would just be increasingly angry, but at the same time he's hyper competitive, and he'd be like, I need to win.
He's like, I hate debasing myself to having to say weird things that I know Wooten is going to figure out, and I hate doing that, but I hate losing more, so...
Yeah, it's priorities for him. I should be allowed to write for Wellington. I get him. How else would I know whenever he's going to appear in the show? It's because I say he's going to appear every single episode, and that way I'm
you're right. Yeah, Victoria is the epitome of broken clock being right twice a day.
Yeah, except for the times where I actually did call him coming back, like, before my Wellington obsession started. I mean, it's always been there. It's like everyone's current Scooby-Doo obsession. It's always been there. But it's more on the DL. Everyone would stop talking about Scooby-Doo because of the new show.
I wouldn't say everyone's obsessed with it in general. Like, you make it sound like everyone is like obsessively loves Scooby-Doo in general. No, they're just hate posting about
Scooby-Doo.
Well, yeah,
How
but
dare
you're saying like there's a current era of everyone being like super hot on how much they love the show. No, people are just hating on this new terrible version.
What I'm saying is, I became a lot more vocal about Wellington as a character once he became a regular for a little bit there.
Regular.
He moved from out of the... I don't remember what it's called.
Recurring characters?
Yeah.
I'll give you that.
Into minor character. And I'm so proud of him.
That's all I have to say about this episode. It was very, very, very good.
That is also all I have to say about this episode, and my voice is getting a little raspy.
Yeah,
So I might have to go.
Yes, that's fair, but in terms of the video, time to turn things over to Renée Renewed. Okay, now episode 953, Renée Renewed, written by Phil Lawler. Should we talk about the bonus track first, since it comes before the episode?
Sure. I listened to it after the episode.
I also listened to it after the episode.
As soon as I listened to it after, I was just like, I was probably supposed to listen to that first.
I was like, it's weird that they put it before the episode, because it never goes that way, so I listened to it after, and then I was like, I see why it was supposed to be before. So they do a little previously on.
They do like a supercut and just like explanation of who Renee is.
Yeah, and Phil talks about like the idea for her. I really like the idea of Connie being Bones from Star Trek, because she'd be like, dang it, Whit, I'm a wedding planner, not a doctor.
He was like, so the only reason Renee exists is because Odyssey is Star Trek. I was like listening to that and I was like, what are you? I was like the Eggman meme. I was like, what are you talking about?
The idea that like, well, we didn't have an engineer. I was like, I mean, Eugene like invents everything. Like, I get that he's Spock, but he also very much does engineering stuff.
Like,
literally, so does Whit.
Connie is the only one who doesn't invent things. She's literally the only main character Odyssey's ever had, including Tom and Bernard, that doesn't invent things. Because Bernard's always up to something, and Tom had a child. So, like, Connie's offering nothing.
Tom did. Sorry? Yeah,
Tom?
Timmy. Yeah, sorry.
Timmy. Do you just forget Timmy existed?
I did, because for a second I thought I was like, Becky's his great niece. What are you talking about? And then
I can't believe you forgot Timmy exists.
Not Becky, sorry. Becky's his sister. What's her face from Case of the Secret Room is his great niece.
We need to start this recording over again. You know nothing.
I know nothing.
You know nothing. Your Odyssey card was just revoked.
I was just thrown for a second, because when you say that, my mind is searching for like living descendants of Tom Riley, of which there are none.
Devin's like, Tom, no kids, his great niece Becky, and his first wife Agnes. That's Devin's family tree.
Okay, so, Phil talks about the design of Renee and says that it's like Star Trek original series, and
is that why she used the green sweater?
So that's why it's the green sweater.
I mean, the character she's based off of wears yellow, but
that's
does have
Connie,
like a
that's
single...
why Connie wears the green sweater.
Bones wears blue.
Yeah, so I...
No, wait, Bones wears red. Bones wears
I feel
blue.
like he wears blue in the new movies. I can picture him in my mind. I could be wrong.
I don't know enough about Star Trek, and you know what? I don't care enough to look at...
Exactly.
The only thing I care about when it comes to Star Trek is, I don't know, whatever things I've reblogged about it on Tumblr, and also all the sliding door bloopers, because those are really funny.
Anyways, yeah, so it's basically a preamble for Renee's character to be like, here's what's going on. And I was like, okay, I was ragging on the episode while listening to it about how non-accessible they made it, like, out of the blue with doing stuff for a character, and then I heard this and I was like, okay, so I think
I was like listening and I was thinking like, man, a lot of this stuff is just so much information and it just comes at you. And then I was like, we have had new characters that are just introduced without any explanation, that just like throw a bunch of stuff at you anyway. So I guess it's not the most like out of the blue
because the episode opens with her talking to Cog, and I'm like, okay, I can see it. You know, they're mirroring her first episode and trying to introduce you to this stuff.
It's been a while since Cog showed up too.
Like her first episode, I don't think we've seen her talking to him since then. I
thought Cog was in another one also.
I don't think so. Like maybe the one where we meet her aunt, the vet, and stuff, because it was associated with, that was her second episode, I believe. I don't think
I thought that was her third.
maybe. It's been years. The point is...
Remember how she was in one episode and then Whit, like, threw a hatchet, like, through someone's skull? That was crazy. And because they were standing in front of the tree.
Yeah, Angels in Horsehair, a title that we super understood a lot.
Yep. I forgot that's what it was called. And
what happens in the actual episode, Victoria?
So it's coming up on, is it like a year Renee's been there?
I guess it's supposed, or did she say it was more than 1 year? It was at least 1 year. The point is, it's the end of her internship at the end of the week.
Yeah. So, like, her internship's about to run out. She's got to figure out, like, if she wants to stay. Should she stay or should she go? And then she's going to figure it out, like, as she goes. She's just like, yeah, I think I'd like to stay here. That's my Scottish accent. Uh-huh. I hope you like
Governor.
Governor, it's Tuesday, isn't it?
It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, isn't it? Pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be honest, I kind of zoned out during the beginning of this episode. I zoned back in.
What's like, what are you going to do? Friday's is your last day. And she was like, I haven't figured it out. I will, but I'm kind of going. And he's like, well, you're welcome to keep working here if you want. And she was like, thank you. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. I'll figure it out and I'll let you know by the end of the week.
Yeah. And then I don't really think anything else really happens before she
gets
to talk to Horace.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I didn't really miss much. So Horace basically explains his invention he's working on. He's having, like, a little bit of trouble with it. It's supposed to be like a
little bit. He's missing a tiny component of the invention.
So it's supposed to be like a personality enhancer. Or just, like, generally an enhancer. And he's just like, let's test it on ourselves and other people. Because, like, when has human experimentation ever ended badly?
I was thinking while listening about how, like, unethical human brain experimentation was going to be, like, one of the things in my, like, list of 3 in the description for this episode. And I was like, dang it, that's, like, word for word used only a couple episodes ago talking about Lily Graham during 73 hours. I was like, I don't think we've used that. And I was like, I used the phrase I had in my mind, like, the ethics of untested human brain experimentation, neurological stuff. I was like, word for word, I just used that a couple episodes ago.
And so he's like, it's not working. And Renee's like, oh, let me take a look at it. I'll rustle up some scrummies to make it work with her Scottish accent.
Mm-hmm.
And then Horace tests it on himself, and a moment happens that made all my skin peel off my body, where he starts hitting on Renee, and I started screaming at my phone as I played the episode. We literally have had an episode in the past, which we both enjoyed quite a bit, may I add.
Yes.
And gave a lot of praise, because it was all about how Renee and Horace don't want to be a couple and don't have feelings for each other.
Honestly, Horace's reaction as he took the thing off might be, like, the fact that he's basically Arrow, and he was like, maybe I'll try this. Because that's what he enhanced about himself. And then was like, oh, no, hate that. Rips off, like, nope.
That's what I was thinking, but I also hate the idea that, like, if you're Arrow,
that he would want to enhance that.
Unless
it seemed like, well, here's a attribute that is so far in one direction. Here's a failing
on his part, the fact that he's not in love with this Scottish
Exactly,
lass.
that would be the issue, unless he was like, well, I'm so proficient in all other aspects of my personality that this is one thing where it's not like bad to good scale, but I'm at one end of the scale, and so I could boost this attribute just to create, like, a clear clinical indicator of success. Let's chalk it up to that so we don't have to think about the alternatives.
Okay. Because it made me mad.
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable.
It was just so bad in every single way, and they never commented on it again for the rest of the episode.
If I was either of them, I wouldn't either.
They need to make a memory eraser next. That's what they need to do.
Yeah, and I wouldn't put it past them anymore.
Anyway, so they start doing some testing.
Why doesn't it work, Victoria? What is it missing?
Well, Renee never said at this point. It was missing like some programming hardware.
Well, not just something. It was missing the ability to connect to the imagination of a person's brain.
Horace is like, I'm imagining I have feelings for Renee, something that would never happen.
Yeah, he was like, it's missing. He was like, it needs the ability to connect to human imagination, but it's just too bad that no technology like that exists, especially not in Odyssey that I know of. Because I really got a good handle on.
Have never stepped within a single metric foot of my brain isn't working either.
Whit's End
park
is what it's called.
No, the park.
Oh, McAllister Park.
He hasn't even been in McAllister Park.
I thought you forgot what Whit's End was called.
No.
Yeah, and nor have I spent like my whole academic career working under Eugene Meltzner, who most of his like super high-end computing work has been.
I was gonna say Renee, and then I almost said Renesmee. I was trying to say resume.
Mm-hmm.
Eugene's resume is basically just like almost all like complicated programming he's done on the Imagination Station.
Exactly, yeah. So it's hilarious to me that Horace has no idea that it exists. But Renee is like, I think I can do something.
Resume, the name of the baby.
Baby from Twilight, yes. Renesmee Squalor. So, yeah, it's like, obviously she's going to go and steal tech from the Imagination Station. Or borrow it. Anyways, it starts working.
So they test it on, I believe it was Cooper.
It was Trey.
Darn it.
Cooper's already so super sports. He's like, I don't need any improvement.
Right. Who do you like more, Cooper or Trey?
Trey.
I like Trey. He's just like a little failure of a boy. No, I'm kidding. He reminds me of meow.
Trent.
He's like a poor little meow meow because he's just trying so hard and he's just like a wet sobbing cat.
He's really not, though.
Every single time he appears, he's just like,
I mean, certainly
so
that trip to the Dominican didn't go great, but...
And there have been other episodes where he's just like, I bad at everything.
Yeah, but he's not that bad at everything. He's good at school stuff. He's like, he's just not like physically proficient like Cooper. He's not like a failure in all areas. Anyways.
So he's just like, I don't words good. Please help. And they're like, okay, we'll help you, governor. And then they zap him real good. And then he starts talking like a walking thesaurus. It was very alarming. If I was him, I would have been very distressed at the fact that I couldn't stop.
Yeah.
I thought he was just going to say a couple words and then be like, oh, wow, thanks, guys. But he just kept doing it. And I was like, oh, is he like that forever now? Mm-hmm. And so, fortunately, it looks like it wore off after like a couple hours.
Well, he turned it off, right?
Oh, right.
It's a thing that you wear.
Like, so they just made like a bunch, because I was kind of unclear about that.
I think it's just the one.
Okay. They just let him walk away with their project.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems safe. Like, what if he fell in a puddle or something like that?
Well, maybe they tweaked up his reflexes so it wouldn't happen. I think it sounded like it more like than a helmet, like it's like a mount on the side of
It's like the headband from My Girl
head.
Hallie.
Exactly, yeah, kind of thing.
I listened to a couple days ago In My Image, followed immediately by My Girl Hallie, and I was just like, wow, these are the two genders, truly. and then I
Literally
listened
the same
to
episode.
And then I listened to Buried Sin, followed by Gloopers,
Mm-hmm.
and I was just like sitting at my desk working, like mouthing along at work the lines to Gloopers, and I was like, truly, this episode never misses. It is a different experience. In my opinion, the true Gloopers experience is listening. There's two true Gloopers experiences I will accept. One is listening to Buried Sin, followed immediately by Gloopers, to just get like, because those ones chronologically and also in the albums take place one after the other.
Can you believe?
And
Can you wait until in the animated series we get up to the Gloopers one?
no. And then the other true experience is because you get all those like good dynamics and how like Dwayne is more chaotic in one and Jared's more chaotic in the other. The other true Gloopers experience, which is the one I used to do while playing with any of my toys, is putting it on the CD in your CD player and then just listening to it on loop like 18 times in a row and just doing that for an entire day. I have spent multiple days doing that in the past, and I don't regret any of it.
Anyways, what happens next?
I don't remember what we were talking about.
So Trey tries it over a couple of days, multiple times.
Yes.
To get more data. And then...
So Renee tells Horace that she used the Imagination Station tech.
Yeah, because he's like, we have to tell the world this is game-changing.
Yeah, he's just like, we got to get one of these for every single person, alter their personalities. And I was like, oh no. Stop.
And that's how we take over the world.
It was actually kind of horrifying, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
Then Renee was just like, oh no, we can't do that. I gotta save my mother. She's been turned into a bear. And then,
if you could change your personality, would ya?
You could change your fate.
Yeah, so...
Anyway, so she tells him that, and he's just like, oh, we gotta ask permission from Mr. Whitaker. And Renee's like, oh, I'm sure it will be fine. And then, which is like, absolutely not. Which I don't... Anyone who listens to the show would know.
Yes, of course. There's like no shortage of precedent for what Whit's answer was going to be here.
And Renee's like, why no? And then Which is like, how can I list the reasons? He's like, 1, Novacom, which I feel like he could have just stopped listing reasons there. He's like, 2, you're testing on kids, which, like, don't do that.
You're already testing on humans, period, shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. He's like, 3, you didn't even ask my permission in the first place to use the technology, and that's very disrespectful. And I think he listed... Or I think
4,
he also
it's
said,
like it's a bad thing that you're doing. Like, it's a dangerous concept.
And also, like, all of those things have, like, officially broken his trust that he had in Renee.
Yeah, you just laid out, like, 4 completely separate, super good reasons to say no.
Combining all of them, it's like, oh, Renee, you really shouldn't have done
she's
this.
Like, but this is so important. This is such an important invention that will help people. I'm like,
is it? Is it, though? Making them more articulate? Is it? Making them...
Yeah, doing it by altering your brain forcibly.
Making every single person more articulate and allo-romantic? Really? Do we need that? That's the right word, isn't it? Yeah, that's what I thought. And then Which is like, Renee, the answer is no. And then she calls him stupid. And I had the same reaction that I had when I watched the Anastasia musical. and Dimitri yelled at the queen that she needs to go see Anya, and she said no and walked away, and then he stomped on the train of her dress so she couldn't leave, or like the Grand Duchess, and I just sat there and I was like, that's the Grand Duchess of Russia! You can't do that! And she turns around, she's like, excuse me? And I was like, he's gonna be beheaded. And that's the same reaction I had when Renee called Whit stupid.
She did that, she left, and then
Whit was just like, I'm sorry, what were you about to say to me? And she's like, no, and she's like, I don't want to work here anymore. And then she left, and I was like,
and then she starts just like scheming, and I thought it was gonna set up, this was gonna be like a whole arc of like evil Renee. Yeah. Where she's like, I'm gonna steal the tech. That would have
been kind of interesting, actually. I would have been kind of down for that.
She was like talking to Cog, who was She's all like,
Cog, he doesn't understand me. I can't believe he didn't let me experiment on more of the children. And then Cog's just like, you're acting kind of like your Nazi teacher who isn't a Nazi, and it was weird that you made him a Nazi. And she's
they made him Jewish. That was the opposite of what happened.
No, that he's Jewish, but then they made him like hunting down. Isn't that what they did?
No, they were like,
made him, like,
would
the
you
devil or something?
If the bag,
like
well, because his name is like Satan Sin Rebel was the thing,
right?
Like, like that's his name. And then I
don't know why I remembered them making him a Nazi.
Because there were Nazis, yes. And it was like, well, you know what?
Weird.
This is kind of weird and feels
not good.
A little anti-Semitic, although like. After the fact, I was like, I mean, it's not as bad as if they were like, here's all these things about this terrible person who has like this satanic coding, and also he's Jewish. It was like, here's all these things, and we're going to say that he could be theoretically Jewish, but the point in making him Jewish was to make him as sympathetic as like theoretically possible. So I was like, I guess in that regard, like, it's not as...
It could have been done better.
Could have been done better, certainly. But it was like, they did that to make him, like, the most theoretically possible, conceptually sympathetic role, to be like, would you turn him over even if he was a Jew, and this was World War II, and Nazis were after him? The most...
And Renee's like, what are you talking about?
And Renee's like, I mean, I guess not, like... How do you want me to answer that? Like, obviously.
There's only one answer to this. Anyway, so then...
Kind of a hyperbolic way to put it, Whit, but okay, I guess.
So then Dog is just like, Ruff, you're acting kind of like your lame teacher, aren't you?
Whimper noises, whining and whimpering. Yeah, like Blue.
Yeah, and then Renee was just like, but that's different. Is
she
not
goes
my
full
fault.
on like evil.
She's like, I'm one of the good ones. And she basically is just like, okay, yeah, I need to stop. And then Trey also is like,
well, she doesn't decide yet. She needs to stop.
Yeah, but Trey also comes up and is like, hey, I turned off the thing because if I just, like, have a thing that's ruling my brain that, like, tells me how to be good at stuff, that's kind of not me anymore, and also inauthentic and, like, really artificial. And it's so much more satisfying to learn how to become good at those things just, like, by working at it and being myself. And I was like, yeah, that's a pretty solid answer. Renee's like,
well, also
what have I done?
The big thing is he's like, the thing I'm wondering is, like, if you made this to help take bad qualities into good qualities, why did you guys pick me? Like, why did you think, Victoria, that I'm such a failure of a human being that I needed fixing? And then that's when Renee is like, oh.
Renee's like, oh, what have I done? I'm a horrible person.
Now I understand why this is bad, and also we might have, like, literally, like, given this child anxiety and depression
Look
forever.
At what you've done. Look at what we did. We make him more articulate. You've given him anxiety is what you've done.
Exactly.
Stop looking at video games.
I was just checking to make sure it was still
going. Devin's playing video games because
I would never. I've never played a video game before.
I can literally see the TV flashing in the reflection of the poster behind you. Anyway.
So. Yeah, so she does that, and then Whit comes up, and he was like, wow, that was a good lesson. Also, I moved the thing because I know that you were going to try and steal it. He's like, trust me, I know the look of someone who's going to try and steal my inventions to misappropriate dangerous technology.
He's like, fool me once, shame on me. Or fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 17 times, shame on me. Fool me 23 times, shame on Renee.
And then Renee's like, yeah, you right. And I'll stay here.
He was like, who said you're allowed to still have that all?
Yeah, you're right. I guess Eugene and Connie haven't told you about a little something called a bite of applesauce. You're fired.
This is a little something called the Angry Whit album.
Yeah. So that is the episode. So, to go over the content, so we open up.
Oh, also Eugene got mentioned in this episode. That's the main reason why Renee was offered the job, because Eugene is more busy at the college right now and can't help.
Yeah, I mean, when was the last time that we heard Eugene actually working at Whit's End? It doesn't happen anymore because he has a full-time job now that is not this. Like, it makes sense.
It's because he doesn't love us anymore.
Eugene, it's been a long time since Eugene was like, bussing tables and something that Richard Maxwell would come in and make fun of him for. So
Richard Maxwell's like, in my day, we didn't bus tables. We got trapped under arcade machines and almost burned to death. Get on my level.
So, Renee was allowed to have Cog again, which was so nice. I'm glad that they brought him back for her main series debut to help people get this a new idea of like, okay, he exists.
Oh, also Renee told Whit about the Cog, program for the first time.
Yeah, she did mention it, didn't she?
And
I didn't think about that.
I was so surprised because I thought that would be like an end game kind of thing that he would find out about it. Like, it would be a whole moral of just like,
letting go.
Let it go. It's been so long. You need to move on.
I didn't really think about it. It made sense to bring it up because, as mentioned not in the episode, but in the flashback, like, Cog's death was the inciting, thing that made her lose faith in the first place.
Yeah, I always imagined, basically from her first episode, it would be, a cyclical thing. Where, it would, the episode where she becomes, a Christian, it would come around to just, everyone finds out about Cog, or, maybe even the Cog program, starts glitching and breaking or something like that.
Yeah, one of those mirror symmetrical plot structures.
And then, they're like, you don't need him anymore, and then, maybe they fix the program, but she's also become, a Christian, and then they're like, you need to let Cog go, and then she does. But no, her telling Whit about Cog, I was like, oh wait, is that allowed?
Yeah, I didn't even register that much to me, but yeah, you're right, that is, excuse me, it's a big deal. So
especially at a moment like this, she never trusted him and deliberately hid Cog's existence from him before, and at a moment where she's fighting with him, I don't know, maybe it was a
slip.
Either a slip, because she was just stressed in the moment, or kind of on her own part without realizing it, a piece of goodwill.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think, when she said it, was it after she was making up with Whit, basically, where she was like, Cog thought it was a bad idea, too?
Yeah, it was during the conversation.
Yeah, so it was after she's like, okay, I'm deciding to trust you, kind of thing. So that could be it. So we see Horace, and he's like, oh, nice, you got it done, Renee, I'm going to put it on right away. And I was like, I would make an ethics gripe about how Horace decided to jump right into human testing immediately, but honestly, it is not remotely surprising coming from him.
And it's very in character for him.
This was
the first time I've listened to a Horace episode since finding out he was voiced by Adam MacArthur. And let me say, I could hear it. I could really hear it.
Yeah, well, especially when he was doing his, like, sultry lines and not his normal Horace voice.
Even when he's doing his normal Horace voice, he sounds like kind of a nasally Marco.
Well, yeah, but it's more emphasized when he's not doing the
he sounds
voice.
Like when he's doing the romancy voice, kind of like older Marco.
So
I forgot to tell you about this. I was listening to this Mob Psycho podcast I like, and there was a person in it talking about a scene from the show and like how much time passes and like age gaps between characters involved with each other. And then one of the people on the podcast is like, there's this series that I've never watched, but I know there's like this huge debate and controversy in the fandom because one of the characters went to a different like time thing and then got way older, and then when they came back they looked young again, but every time they go into that place they look old again, and they're
became
technically
huge shipping
like
controversy,
30s,
and that series
but they're still shipped with a teenager.
The Chronicles of Narnia.
And then they're like, and I'm so glad I'm not in that fandom because I know people fight about it. And I was sitting, and they were also like, and I'm not going to say what the fandom is. And I was sitting there and I was like, I know what this series
It's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
And it's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And Susan kissed Caspian when he... only in the movies, though.
So, yeah, I was thinking of Horace in that, like, go-karting episode where he gave the kids, like, super dangerous, like, turbo nitrous fuel and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, sure, go off. Just be safe with it.
He's literally I slapped floor Whit. Like, as
just make sure the axe is nice and sharp.
That's literally him. Literally him.
I couldn't believe how Horace is like, I spent all year working on this project. Like, can't let it fail now. And I'm like, so you spent all year
working on a project you knew you didn't have the technology for, and the technology didn't even exist in the world.
You spent all this time working on a project which is entirely reliant. The core of the entire concept is far beyond anything that you're aware of existing in your world. Something that's far beyond anything that exists in the real world. And you got all the way up to this semester missing the part that is like 90% of the technical challenge here. And like, obviously in this world the tech exists because Whit's been using it, but Horace doesn't know that. So like, he really put the cart a light year before the horse here in deciding that this is what he was going to work on. It's insane that he was like, I'll figure that out farther down the road.
It's absurd to me to believe that Horace hasn't heard the words imagination station before. So I just want to know, what does he think the imagination station is? Does he think it's like a video game? Like, what does he think it is? I don't know.
I mean, I've seen that phrase before on like a little like kids
he thinks
play
it's like
pen.
A studying hub
like
online.
On like one of the like on the BC ferries or something like that, on area where it's like, oh, here's like a small like kids play area to keep your kids busy while you're doing this other stuff. It was called like the imagination station. So that's what I'm picturing, is basically like a little nursery to keep kids busy or something like that.
He sees like all these adults and like kids, and they're just like, I had the craziest like thing happen to me in the imagination station, and he's just like,
a bunch of dolls and a
weird.
Slide. Yeah,
he thinks it's just like one of those little toys that's like you put like a quarter in and then it just rocks back and forth that you ride.
No, it's just a playpen, and it has a bunch of the like doctor's office things with the curly wires and
the
wooden
you
blocks
like push
that move
the
back and forth. Exactly, yeah. So yeah, he does it on himself, and I was like, this whole experiment reeks of such incredibly dangerous precedent, because it's like, here's a thing I'm gonna put on, and it is controlling part of my personality to change it. Hope nothing bad happens. I'm
surprised nothing bad did happen. The episode easily could have taken that.
This is literally like basically what happened to Doc Ock. Like, it's just begging to glitch out and like trap his brain in a state that he can't externally modify anymore. And
well, I mean, we didn't really get to see Horus again, from what I recall, in like the last half of the episode much.
Yeah, he was having.
So I'm assuming he did use it on himself.
He was
and
having
he is
Nova
now
Box
running around
trauma
as a super villain
moments
with like tentacles controlling him.
Yeah, he was having a full like Nova Box breakdown of like the mental decay post-use.
Yeah, like they never said the word Novacom, but like he's talking about Novacom. He did go into more detail than I thought he would. He was just like, there was a group of people, they did a bunch of bad stuff.
Which, I mean, it could be referring to a number of things, but it most strongly seemed to be Novacom.
He was talking about Blackguard's revenge.
So they're like, we're going to experiment on Trey Calhoun. And they're like, hey, Trey, do you want to do this? And I was like, what? And they're like, don't worry. We've talked to both of your parents, and they've given us permission. And I was like, you want me to believe for a single second of my entire life that renowned neurosurgeon Dr. Joseph Calhoun agreed to an untested and invasive neurological experiment?
They went up behind him while he was, like, doing something that he was focusing on. Yeah. And they're like, person who lets us experiment on his son, say what? And he was like, what? And they're like, yes, literally, let's go.
To do this on his son after it's had one brief human test, no previous testing. He had only reached the ability to connect with a brain prior that day, and he like put it on the computer, and the computer's like, yep. And he was like, okay, that we're good, ready for human testing. And that was like yesterday, and they're like, and then he said yes to that for his child, and you expect me to believe that? Like, literally insane behavior. I didn't even think about until
there's the possibility that they just lied.
Yeah, honestly, like
they probably lied. Because I have a very hard time believing that anyone would agree.
He's the last person in Odyssey besides Whit who would agree to that, and I didn't think even like until after the episode, but I mentioned it earlier about how the entire
Lily Graham would be like, "Well, fair is fair. I experimented on you. You experimented on me. Have a go at my dome."
The entire last album which was also referenced in the previous episode, just now, was also centered around hugely...
All I can say is thank God they didn't ask Jason Whittaker, because he would have been like, make me a better spy than my girlfriend, and they'd be like, okay, and then he'd be mind-controlled again.
The entire last episode,
where I said, Jason, we can't keep doing
what we talked about in the previous album was about hugely invasive and unethical experimental human neurological implants being used.
Loves it. It's so good.
Being used to influence behavior, and how it was being used for terrorism. Incredibly specific. Like, we just did that. Come on, guys.
See, what not pictured was Renee like throwing it in the trash. And then the bad guys from the last album, like, skittering up and just, like, grabbing it out with their teeth like a raccoon and running away with it. Like, they're like, we're gonna go find Jason Whittaker.
Whit brings it up. He's like, obviously, no, you can't do it. But among his reasons, he's like, you did this in my shop, on my property, on a child?
In my house.
On a child without my knowledge? And she's like, we asked his parents. He's like, I don't care. Like, did you even think about the legal ramifications of the fact that you were doing that, like, on my property, like, let alone at all, and without letting me know? Like, I did not think anyone was going to call out the insanely unethical brain manipulation experiment on a child being conducted without his knowledge right there, and using his stolen technology. Like, Renee clearly has...
That's something we can commend Odyssey for. They're pretty good at doing specifically that.
Yeah, it's like, I'm the only one who's allowed... There's a trend of it
happening, so they're like, we can't do this again.
It's like, I'm the only one who's allowed to do, like, non-consensual brain stuff with my imagination station tech on people, like I did to you.
Like, have you seen... Oh, wait, you're her. And she's like, yeah, I still have nightmares about it every day.
Yeah, it's like Wooten's line. He was like, yeah, there was this one time... Oh, wait, that was... Yeah, Renee clearly has no idea about the history of the Imagination Station if she ever thought Whit would be okay with this, or that it would be anything but a disastrous idea.
Renee's like, Mr. Whittaker, you created the Imagination Station. It isn't dangerous. He's like, one time it almost killed me, Renee. It literally almost killed me because I got too jazzed up about seeing my dead loved ones.
Yeah.
We can't do this.
So, like, obviously Whit references, like, you know, this stuff has been tried before for dangerous stuff, and he's referencing Novacom, but also think about, like, it wasn't stolen, but, like, A Touch of Healing, I'm sure he was thinking about, and like all the disastrous implications of people being augmented there.
Or like even when he connected the Nova box to the imagination station.
Exactly.
And he became like Hitler.
Yeah, and Stalin and Pharaoh and stuff is another example. We know that even when it was used for like good stuff in the Eugene Returns trilogy, he was still like, no, I'm not letting the government have access to this technology.
And it still like did hospitalize him when he finally did get his memories back after using it on himself, and he could barely stand even before he got the memory rush. And also we had Maury, who made a little bootleg version of it and like trapped Emily in like a hellscape in her brain, basically.
Yes, and we have, like we said last time, the technology that Lily Graham was working on presumably was still being used in a way originally possibly based on the technology that Novacom had taken from Whit. So like even as it was being used in the last album, possibly was still based on some of the stolen Imagination Station tech.
And isn't there like an Imagination Station episode or something where someone gets like stuck and they're like having a panic attack at the end?
Hide and Seek.
Yeah, Hide and Seek. Yeah.
And Kelly in the new Imagination Station at the end of album 50.
Mm-hmm. If I had a nickel for every time. And also when it goes bad in one of the early.
I didn't even think about
episodes.
Blackguard's Revenge, but you mentioned that. The point is,
Blackguard's Revenge, like, and then also when it gets stuck, I think Alex gets stuck in it when Wooton's running the store.
Yep, in Breaking Point. Yep.
Yeah, in Breaking Point.
So the point is, even
there's a lot of times.
Even when it's not being like directly misappropriated by outside parties, it's still like anytime anything's gone wrong with the technology, it's been like dangerous or scary, and is often caused like damage to other people. Like in A Touch of Healing was caused like a lot of mental.
I was gonna say A Touch of Healing when they use distress. It to augment themselves, and then everyone gets like jazzed up on imagination juice,
and then they take it away. Yeah, and then it's like a huge deal.
And Jason's there again. Why is he always there? Jason, we can't keep doing this.
So
Jason's like, I love mind control. What about you, Jack?
All of those things, I'm so glad that like Whit is like, no, because of all of these reasons, and it seems like I'm directly referencing Novacom, but I'm also thinking about all of these other things. And then he was like,
it's like actively having flashbacks, and he's just like, no.
Yeah, so I'm so glad, like I said, the fact that like even when Eugene's memory came back and Whit was like, even if the machine did like trigger this and it wasn't like, just God doing it in that moment, like I still won't give my technology to the NIH. So you really thought he was going to give it for this, Renee? Because when he brings up Novacom, she was like, yeah, I know about that. And I was like, you say you know all about that and you still did.
I just assume she's heard the name Novacom and just like, oh yeah.
But he didn't say Novacom. He was like, yeah, my technology has been like misused by people.
Maybe she's thinking of one of the other less ethical times it's been used.
But still, she was like, yeah, I know all about that. And I was like, okay, so
like, do you or do you just think you do?
Any benefit of the doubt I've given you now is gone.
I'm really wishing right now that Odyssey was a visual medium, so I could make like a Hard Knock Life music video to all the times people have been horribly damaged by the Imagination Station tech.
So like it really seemed when Renee was talking her plan up to Cog, who was like whimpering and whining like this is such a bad idea, which is interesting because I thought Cog was just kind of there to like make noises and react to her journal. I didn't think it was capable of dissenting against her ideas.
I think Cog, because that's what I thought. I mean, that's basically all we knew before this episode. Cog in this episode is more like a kind of Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, an angel on her
shoulder.
Sort of
feel, where it's like, I can only imagine Cog is linked up to her in some form. So, like...
Well, I think it's just an AI, and so it's just showing,
I guess like attached to her journal.
Negative.
So like,
if it's an AI, if it was an AI, but it's actually like hitting its singularity, and it's like, yes, Renee, I think this is a good idea. You should attach computers to everyone that can control their brains.
Oh
no! And then he's
Okay,
gonna be like
what
Rick and
does-
Morty, and his cogged little doggy, and he's like, now
What?
I control the people.
Because, like, singularity when it comes to robots is, like, the robot becoming sentient and self-aware. But, like, singularity can mean other things, too.
Well, yeah, a singularity just means everything condensed to a single point. It's a black hole.
Oh, okay. Because that's, like, a thing in Bungo Stray Dogs where, like, people's powers blow up and then, like...
Yeah. A black hole is a
atomic
singularity.
bombs,
it's infinite mass compressed to, like, a single point of zero volume. So
Okay,
in the idea...
that's my favorite character in Bungo Stray Dogs. He is a walking one of those. And my other favorite character might also be. We don't know yet.
So it was... this episode was like a comedically wild way to reintroduce Renee's character arc to... or to introduce her arc to the numbered albums. Like, they just threw her in here at, like, this super climactic moment of her character.
I just still can't believe that argument she had with Whit.
Yeah,
like,
all that stuff.
I listened
and then
to this like a week
she
ago.
was sounding like just
it.
a downright delusional when she was arguing with Cog.
Yeah.
And so, like, they even called back to Wittonia, and I was like, insane. I forgot even all the things we were mentioning.
This episode was basically the culmination of every Renee episode so far.
Oh yeah, so when Whit referenced what we assume is Novacom, that might have... I realized afterwards, I was like, oh, maybe it was supposed to be referencing World of Wittonia and Dr. Lieberness trying to steal it.
It better not have been. There's no way.
Which is absurd, but they're like, we then mention this more explicitly, and that is something that Renee knows all about, and so it's
I refuse.
Theoretically, they could be
I don't like to think about the fact that episode existed, let alone choose it over Novacom. I don't think so.
It, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Dr. Lieberness was supposed to be a real human being, because the second time he appeared, it was just as, like, an imagination station person, or, you know, room of consequence, whatever it was.
She just has, like, visions of him, evil visions of him. Well, do you think sometimes, like, he comes up to her, like, in person, and he starts talking to her, and she just ignores him because she's like, not today, horrors.
Not today, and he's Satan, like, what did literally. You just say? Not today, Astan.
She's just like, oh, the horrors, the horrors, the horrors. And he's like, are you good?
Yeah, it's like our flag means death and being haunted by the captain guy. Except you're like, oh wait, that's his brother who's still alive and he's actually here.
That's the real version of him,
yeah.
And not the one from my nightmare world.
Exactly. So Renee's like, I'm just gonna have to steal it from him. And I was like, I really didn't think she would do this. Like, this is such a bad idea. And then Trey...
She just kept on making more and more bad choices.
Yeah, she really just full sent it. And then right as she's about to, like, break into the filing cabinet, and then Trey comes up and he was like, hey, I don't want to do it anymore because, like, I don't think it's right. It doesn't make sense to try and Deus Ex Machina our personalities instead of, you know, being human beings. You can't just, like, download kung fu into people's brains like the Matrix. Like, it's not right. And then he's like, why did you pick me? Why did you think I needed fixing? And I was like, that is a gutting question, because you know what, Renee? There's no answer that you can give here that is not going to absolutely psychically destroy this child, which is why she makes the correct choice in not answering the question and dodging it completely. Like, she could have done terrible damage, because you know what? The truthful answer is that you thought that he was, like, you know, insufficient as a person and needed to be fixed. Like, that's...
Trey is my sweet boy, and he's just such a punching bag in, like...
She could have, like, so really messed him up, not even including the potential for actual brain damage from the machine.
Yeah, he's going to start buying birdhouses now, Renee. Look at what he made him do.
When Renee first said that she was going to steal the tech, I wasn't looking at the remaining runtime in the episode, and I'd assumed that was going to be the end of the episode, and it was going to be an ongoing thing. But then I looked and I saw there was a chunk left, and I was like, okay, so maybe this isn't an evil rogue Renee arc, but it's going to be wrapped up in this episode. And it was. And Whit's like,
Renee Rogue.
He was like...
You know that miraculous ladybug character?
Yeah.
Okay, my joke.
Uh-huh. He was like, I moved it, obviously, because, like, I could tell you were going to steal it. You don't think I know the look in someone's eye when they're going to steal the imagination station technology?
He's like, it's such a specific look, yet one I see so often.
It's like such a specific look. We have posters up on the wall that, like, show the expression that's like, if you see someone look like this, pull the wire, pull the stop cord.
Yell applesauce. Yell the code for applesauce. Yeah. The building will shut down.
318.99. 318.99. So...
I think I'm still kind of apathetic towards Renee.
I liked that this episode gave a lot of, like, oomph to her character. Like, it was definitely a much bigger deal for her character development than almost any other one since her first episode. They did some, like, you know, took some big swings with it, like, you know, Renee fully rebelling against Whit, and then calling back, even though it had to be to World of Wittonia. Again, I can't believe that we've had multiple episodes that have called back to this episode.
They're like, it's just such an impactful story.
It's so important to the lore.
It's not as like insane as Christmas Bells or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Coming up in Olivia's story.
Yeah. So we had callbacks to a number of previous Renee stuff, and it brought together a lot of stuff, but it did not close her arc. It was like, I'm going to guess it's kind of like a mid-arc climax for Renee.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
I'm curious if all of her future, like, developmental stuff is going to be in numbered albums now that they've moved her over.
I'm just really hoping she's not going to, like, take Eugene's place. Because that would just...
Well, what do you mean by take his place? Like, as a Wits End employee?
Like, as a main character. As a Wits End employee.
Doubt it. Although I didn't think about that timing with Will Ryan passing away. I didn't consider that. But that is a good point about, like, why did they choose to move Renee? I thought it was just because they're like, hey, we want to do more big stuff with her, and we think now we should probably move it over. I didn't even think about, like, Eugene and Will. That actually makes a lot more sense now that you mention it. I don't think it's so much to replace him because, like I said, the role that Renee is supposed to be filling currently in terms of, like, working at Wits End inventing stuff is not a role that Eugene has played for a very long time at this point. So it's like she's basically fulfilling a role that Eugene used to be. Obviously, there's not a direct one-to-one because his role lately has been teaching at the college and, you know, parenting Buck with Katrina, and neither of those are things that Renee has the ability to do. Renee
becomes Buck's dad.
Yeah.
You know who I miss? The unsung Wits End employee.
Jimmy.
No, Nick.
Yeah.
I need to go back
Nick
since I've been re-listening to some stuff and
seems to be mopping the ceiling.
Nick episodes. Nick was good.
I
was looking for passages part 1 and part 2 because like
you wanted to listen to them?
I wanted to listen to them again, and I was like, what album is this in again? And I was like scrolling
34.
around like the 30s area, and I just went like right past In Your Wildest Dreams, and I was just like, my thought was, I was just like going from album to album and just like looking at the covers and titles, and I was like, no, and I saw In Your Wildest Dreams, and I literally thought to myself, it can't be in that one, it's a good episode. And then I went to
That's why it's wild, because In Your Wildest Dreams,
wait, no, it is.
In Your Wildest Dreams is a bunch of wacky stuff, including mostly half episodes, but then they put in a 2-parter in there, which is 4 times as long as most of the content in that album. And is also, like, really good and is, like...
And is, like, lore heavy,
It's referencing back to... Like, it's bringing in a book series it'll like connect to later audio adaptations of Passages, but it's also being
Wait, did the Passages books already exist?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought they came after.
No, this was like, hey, we're gonna do a two-parter that's Passages to like tie in, like, hey, also here you could go read the books and find out these more other stories.
Are they ever going to adapt any of the other books?
I mean, they've said like if they have a hiatus again, it might happen over the span of that, because that's when Passages happened, because it was really long and it's the length of a full album. So
I guess it is now, because Passages is 9 episodes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's most of a full album, so
it's 3.
Yeah, they don't have time to drop that in unless it replaced a whole regular season, which is why
I'd be fine with that, though. I want to know what happens next, and I don't want to read the books.
I mean, I would also be fine with that happening. I think it would be, I would love to get
they get
Orange Judgment.
They get like Jim. My brain isn't listening to me. They get Jim Cummings to play the villain of every single one, even if that character is a woman or not. I'm assuming
or a child or anything.
There are child villains?
I don't know. I'm just saying. I don't remember the.
You've read all the books.
Yeah, of years and years and years ago.
Okay.
You know, all the child villains in the Bible.
What do you mean you don't remember how it happens in every single one?
Anyways, also because the inciting incident of Passages is based off of Malachi's message. Because it's all like Timmy's journal and stuff that first brings it all up. So it's all of those factors make it wild that it is in album 34. So that's why I remember that it's there, and I don't blame you for not remembering for the same reason.
I just think it's so funny that was my first thought, because part of my brand is I don't hate the half episodes. So even as I was like looking at it, and I was like, why did I just like do that to them?
You know why. Anyway, so that's the episode. That is Renée Renewed.
Ratings. I don't know.
It's hard because, I like that they took a big theoretical strides with Renee's character development, that they brought her to the main albums. I think it was a good way to do it with her technology and stuff like that. I think that it makes sense. I'm glad that they brought in, Whit, bringing up these reasons that make total sense and have copious precedent in the history of the show, like we said. I think that it is surprising that Renee would be willing to do child experimentation like that. Like, it seems surprisingly unethical for her to jump right into that the way that she was willing to. There's the fact that they had to bring up World of Wootonia again. It's like a little knock against the episode. But overall, I think it was a good move. Like, it makes sense in terms of what Whit was saying, and from like a writing standpoint, because, Eugene isn't in the shop and Will isn't around, to transition her character in this way, to make this lateral move. I hope that it does not mean that we have to lose even more like actual character stuff from happening in the AIOC, because she was already like the one character who's allowed to have character stuff happen in there. So I hope that we don't lose that. It's like, you did just when you thought it couldn't become more episodic on the AIOC. Hopefully this means she can also interact with other people besides Whit now. Because you know how it's been. As you were the one who pointed out to me, where it's like, she's barely ever talked to anyone else before. Like, even when she interacted with Kanye and Eugene,
so many
it was inside the
Renee.
imagination station. It's like they're like, we want her to have a fleshed out development, but in the most bottle episode way possible.
Yeah.
Where it's just a direct one-on-one kind of philosophical
See,
development.
Okay, give your rating, and then I'll go on my Renee tangent, because I need to have one every time she shows up.
I'm gonna give it a 4.5, just because it feels a little bit out of character to me to think that after everything Renee has been through with the imagination station, that she would think it's a good idea to do this, along with just from the perspective of an inventor who's familiar with the concept of informed consent and medical ethics, that you would decide to go ahead with, technically speaking, to test it on a child. She should, especially since it's for the college, like, it should have been fully reviewed by the college's experimental ethics review board, because you're involving a human in a test or experiment in any way. It should have.
Also, she was completely, if Whit wanted to sue her over what she did, he would have been completely in the right, and he probably would have won the case.
Yeah.
Like, easily.
So I get that it's like, you could argue elements of like, oh, but that's the whole point, is like Renee knew it was wrong, but she was so caught up in like, because she's an engineer and, you know, thinking the technology and ends justify the means, that overcame what should normally have been obvious to her and stuff like that. Like, I see how you could argue the opposite, and like the recursion of this theme even within her own arc is the point. So it's like, I feel like you could go both ways a little bit there, but I don't know, it just seems so surprising. Like I said, especially since literally last album was all about like untested brain manipulation, experimentation, unethically and unwillingly. And then literally 2 episodes later, we're like, hey, here's a...
I'll be honest, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't think about it till after the episode, and then I was like, oh yeah, the entire last album was about that. And then last episode, they referenced last album with Jillian and Jason, and then this episode they're like, okay, here's a different machine that's based on Whit's tech that we're going to use to unethically experiment on human brains in order to control their personality.
And they're like, and we love doing it. We love doing it.
So, I mean, that seemed a little oddly samey, like the timing of it as well. But overall, I'm glad that they brought Renee into the fold finally, and not just in name, like when Connie mentioned her previously.
I think that was Eugene.
I thought it was Connie who said it. I mean, I know it was they were looking for Buck and Jules, but I thought it was Connie who referenced her.
Maybe she was just talking to Eugene.
Because she was like, I've talked to this person, and I saw Renee on the street. She hasn't seen me either. Or whatever it was. Anyways, there's pros and cons. Overall, like, I'm glad that it feels like there's a big step forward. We got to see Cog again, and Renee acknowledged it to Whit. In the previously on, we had all this stuff talking, which included, you know, Cog is the reason that, you know, Renee is in the situation that she's in, and so obviously Whit finding out about it is a big deal. And Cog acting not just as a passive observer to her journalings, but acting as a conscience for her is an important note. I'm gonna give it 4.4 out of 5.
I genuinely don't know what to give this. The thing is, I don't dislike Renee, but like I don't really like
what they do with her.
Like, I honestly don't really care that much for her, and it's
because they don't let her have relationships with anyone except for Whit.
Yeah, like she has a relationship with Horace. I'm invested in their friendship.
She's got to actually have significant interactions with Horace now, like, as the second character besides Whit.
My favorite Renee episode is the one with like her and Horace and Jay. That episode is great.
Yeah.
And like my favorite moments in this episode, besides like her argument with Whit and the bit where Trey like told her off, were even though it had that part I really hated, the interaction she had with Horace.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, I'm invested in their friendship. That totally could be it. The fact that she, like, barely interacts with anyone, like I've noticed before. Because I was just sitting there while you were talking, and I was thinking, like, it's not the fact that she's worked at Whit's End, that she's, like, working at Whit's End. Because, like I mentioned before, that's why I thought of Nick. Because I love Nick, and he worked at Whit's End. But the thing is, that wasn't just his character. He had, like, a billion family members, and he had, like, all these plots with Lisa and stuff.
All
and,
the
like,
animals,
all
and
the
then
animals.
like his
And it was
relationship
really
with
interesting.
Connie and
He had,
with
like,
Whit.
his cousin. He had this stuff going on with him in Novacom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Nick was a very, very multifaceted character, and was very interesting and entertaining, and I love Nick. And, like, Renee has her aunt, who we've never seen again. She has Cog, who finally showed up again. Although I still feel
her
like
aunt was also the person who fixed Sparky's leg, but
yes. But, like, Renee didn't come up at all.
Yeah.
In any
the point
of
is,
that.
apart from Renee, unique character, she has a relationship with, like, Whit and Horace, which both have, like, there's an actual relationship,
Like,
and it's not just, oh, I talked to you that one time.
She talked to Wilson in Charlotte. I can't think of any other time she's talked to Wilson. She's talked to Connie and Eugene in her first episode when they were
which
fake.
Which was not in real life.
She's talked to Eugene a couple times because of college stuff.
I would say, like...
But it's not, like, a relationship.
I understand to a degree, like, wanting to, like, slightly limit the amount of, like, impact she has with other characters. But the fact that
she doesn't have to have an impact on other characters to have a relationship with them that's interesting.
Yes. Well, I didn't mean impact as in, like, something.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm also just... I figured that's what you were going to say.
I understand why they wanted to do that as an AIOC exclusive character. However, the fact that she was only in the AIOC certainly does not mean that she is not allowed to develop relationships. Like, it would...
I figured it out.
A real relationship.
She bores me. That's what it is.
She could have
I find her boring.
She could have a real relationship with Connie that does not need to impact plot critically on Connie's stuff in the major albums. Like, there's no reason that didn't need to happen, which is why I think that it is specifically that they basically wanted it to be like a long bottle episode of we're locking Whit and Renee in a room together, and they're just kind of having conversations and scenarios in a vacuum until, Renee develops as a character.
Until one of them explodes.
However, I do hope, even though that part has not changed necessarily, the fact that they chose to move her into the main albums, I am choosing to believe. There is optimism in that belief, but I do feel like it is grounded in realism. That the fact that she's in the album now means she will be allowed to interact more with other characters and actually form unique relationships with them.
I think, yeah, a big part of it is the fact that she was in the OAC. So it's like she's allowed to develop, like you said, as a character and have impact, but only within this, like, cone that she's shoved into. And the fortunate question mark thing is that Horace was also shoved into the cone. Mm-hmm. So, like, they can do stuff together and build each other in different ways and be fascinating characters together. And Whit can, like, phase through the cone Terminator 2 style. But, like...
Well, everyone can phase through the cone, but only Whit does. Other people just,
like, bounce off the cone. It does nothing.
It's like the TV...
She has no impact.
It's like the TV shows in the MCU before Disney Plus, where it's like, oh yeah, you can have all this stuff, and we can have characters from the movies can show up, and you can interact with them, but we're going to choose that you can't have any, like, backflow on impact and stuff, and you can...
Yeah,
but
that's a good comparison.
Even in that limitation, even if we never let you be in the movies, you can still have, like, a fruitful and a really complex and developmental thing that interacts with all characters, and you can have the TV shows interact with each other, and they did. And Renee did not do that, which is why it felt more like a conscious choice about how they wanted to do her arc than something that was a requirement of her being limited to the AIOC. And so I feel like now So that means technically she could end up in the albums and they could still follow down the same route. But I feel like...
Which I'm really hoping doesn't happen.
I don't think it will happen because I feel like they wouldn't have moved her to the albums if that was the plan. I think they moved her here because they need, like you said, if they're going to be moving away from Eugene content and they want someone to help fill the void of main characters.
I'm really hoping that's not what it is, but I did want to just mention
like you said, logistically, I don't think she's filling Eugene's role, his niche as a character, but I do think she's filling the void, helping fill the void of main characters who need to be adults and have screen time.
Yeah, like Jack and Jason did for Whit.
Exactly. It's just like, we brought in Wilson once. He didn't replace
Wait,
Jack.
did I say Wilson for Whit?
No, you said Whit, but I'm saying
oh, yeah.
Wilson also came in, I don't
for Jack.
think that he necessarily was like replacing Jack or Tom, even though to a degree, like he did fill their niche more so than I think Renee will with Eugene. But it's also like a lot of his role is as telling stories of him being a missionary and him acting as a pastor in that sense. More so
being a grandfatherly figure.
Yeah, he does that a lot more so than he is acting as like, oh, I'm Whit's childhood friend. So in that way, it's not like a direct like, oh, this is new Jack.
Yeah.
Even though they have...
He's like, I'm Whit's childhood enemy.
Exactly.
He's the nega Jack.
Exactly.
Evil Jack Allen be like, I'm gonna kill you in this snowball fight.
Exactly. So it's like that where... they needed another, like, older contemporary for Whit because Tom and Bernard and Jack were all gone. But he's not exactly the same character in the role that he fulfills. So I feel like that's the sense of Renee has overlap where she's going to do science-y and engineering stuff and work at Wit's End, but it's not a perfect one-to-one. And so they just needed her around to have another adult character to help flesh out the cast now that we're not going to have Eugene around potentially, assuming that he is not recast. At least in the moment, Eugene is not around, and so we need another character to help fill out the ensemble.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting because, like I said before, I was thinking, like, is it the fact that Renee's a new employee that isn't Eugene or, like, Connie at Wit's End? And I was like, no, I like Nick. Is it the fact that the fact that Renee is, like, a new adult main lady character?
No, because Jillian.
And it was like, is it the fact that Renee's an inventor and we already have so many like inventors on the show? No, because I love Horace. And it's like, what is it? What about the fact that I love Horace, but I just can't get into Renee? I don't know what it is.
Well, it's because Horace is allowed to like.
Horace is allowed to be more multifaceted. He's like allowed to be like goofy and fun and make mistakes and it not have to be like a huge moral every single time. And with Renee, it's just like, you're going to have to learn about all these philosophy things.
Yeah,
sometimes
it's also the fact that it feels like every time. It feels
like homework.
Yeah, it's like every episode, like album 4 style, where it's like each one of these episodes represents a core concept of being a new Christian. It's like every episode with Renee needs to turn into some kind of like ethical or moral lesson for her to learn about.
And it's like, honestly, exhausting. I find it exhausting. And I remember one time I worded it badly because I said sexy lamb.
It feels so formulaic.
I still maintain that I want there to be an episode where Renee just happens to be there and interact with a couple characters and kind of help a scenario along, but not need to learn a lesson and not be in the wrong and also not be the main focus.
Yeah, I mean, she's been incidental, like you said, she's in Charlotte, which I forgot about.
Yes. But at the same time, I don't know, I still feel like that could have been a different character.
Well, exactly. That's why Renee needs to be there, but not just to be incidental side character. She needs to be there and have it matter, but also have it not be like, oh, I guess I learned another lesson today about ethics and morality. She needs to be there and be allowed to be right about something. She needs to allow to be an authority figure as an employee.
And it needs to be a scenario where it's like specifically she is the person who can help there.
Exactly.
Like,
and not where
she's niche. Like it couldn't just be like a role where we literally just like swap out any other character and it would just be the same.
Exactly. So like I said, because she is being put in the show, I assume to help flesh out the cast, that logically should mean that she is not going to be, oh, and you can still only talk to Whit. If they want her to be there to flesh out the cast, that means that she needs to interact meaningfully with other main characters as well. So that's why.
And even though I love her and Horace, I need her to interact with more characters who aren't also just Horace.
Which is why I think it's going to happen now. So
yeah.
So that's my rating for the episode. That's what I think.
I'm going to give it a... I don't know. Renee just kind of frustrates me. I'm going to give it like a 2, I think. But like, just because Renee is starting to exhaust me. I might change my mind. I'll probably change my mind, but yeah.
It does, I mean, like you said, it feels...
If I get to a point in the future where I start really liking Renee, I guarantee all past episodes that she's in, I'll probably enjoy a lot more. But
it just
right
feels
now, I
like
don't really care about her.
The episodes where she's the focus get formulaic and repetitive, where it's
Yeah.
like, oh,
it
she's
feels like
Whit says like
MLP to a certain extent. It's like, well, what's the friendship lesson we've learned today?
And it's like, Whit's like, here's this thing that you should do because Jesus. And Renee's like, no, I think that I should do it this way. And then she tries doing it this way, and it turns out bad. And she was like, well, I guess you were right, Whit. I guess, even though I don't believe what you believe, and yet I will admit that there were validities to
You're
the lesson
right.
today.
You just summed up every single episode she's in. At the end of every episode, she's like, Dear Cog, today I learned that friendship truly is magic, even though I'm still not a Christian. And then she uses her horn to send the message away.
Exactly.
Oh, man. You're right, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Part of me feels like I rag on Renee too much, but the other part's like, but I'm right. So.
I mean, it was just the fact that it really stuck out to me with this episode, especially because, like, the way that it opened and closed with her journaling and talking to Cog made it feel so much like a reflection of her first episode.
And I do think that's on purpose.
I know, and I do feel like it was on purpose.
I do like that.
It was meant to call back when they...
Because it does show the change that she's made since
in the previously on, when it started playing the thing, I thought they were just playing audio from the episode. I was like, this is a long clip they're playing from the episode. And then I realized it was from her first episode where she was talking to Cog. But it felt so reflective that it also made me feel a little bit like, okay, have we actually come anywhere? Or does it feel like we're just back where we started?
Yeah, even when I said it shows how far she's come, and then I paused and I was like, what has she done? She knows how to make more programs. She knows more about ethics in the Bible. She yelled at Whit, and she made more programs, and she doesn't have a thing for Horace. Those are 5 things I can say, and I think 2 of them were the same thing.
So I think that's about all we have to say for Renee. Remember when you were like, well, I don't have much to say about this episode.
I don't have much to say, but it turns out I did, and all of it was complaining.
I was like, I doubt it, and here we are now.
It's because
80 minutes into this.
There's the characters. Review. There's like, if you take the pool of characters in Odyssey, the ones I have the most to say about are the ones that I really, really love. So like S tier for me, which are usually characters I'll mention in every single episode of the podcast who will never show up in the episodes where I'm talking about them, like Wellington.
Yeah, I mean,
And then the ones I just don't care about.
You're describing, Victoria, you're describing everyone about everything. That's the concept of like participation bias, right?
The concept of the definition of being passionate about something.
Well,
I'm passionate about my apathy towards Renee.
That's what participation bias is about, right? That's what it's called, I think, where it's like if you have a survey but it's voluntary for people, then you're going to get skewed results in both directions because people are only going to participate in something if they feel really positively or really negatively about something.
Yeah, that's true.
Or with a small outlier, people who are just bored enough to be like, yeah, I'll take it.
And those are the results in the middle, baby.
Very few of them, but it's like that's why reviews for products are like either 5 stars or 1 star usually, because it's like if I'm coming here with something to say, it's either because this was so amazing people need to know about it, or because I need to warn everyone else away from
like
how bad it was.
Every single top Goodreads review is just like 5 star, 5 star, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Exactly.
And then you look at like the stats, because it always gives the stats, and it's just like tons of 5 star, and I'm always like, why are the 1 star reviews the first ones I see? It's gonna make me think the book is bad.
Like really diligent about like I always do reviews or provide data for surveys and experiments when I can. You're only ever gonna get
I'm very
extreme
confirmation biasy, because I always feel like bad being negative about books on Goodreads, so I only rate books that I give 5 stars or 4 stars to, which is probably not great.
It's not the worst thing, because you are still providing more positive data for things that you like. Yeah. It's not as like data thorough as like providing your thoughts on everything that you read, but still providing more good reviews to things that you like more does still push people more towards like the content that you like. So it's not.
Well, that makes me feel less bad about it.
It's not like destroying the system data wise.
Yeah.
I don't think. I mean, it really depends on how your algorithm works.
But one little dandelion seed among the forest.
Yes. Anyways, we need to end this episode very badly.
Yes. I want to leave.
Next time, we are talking about...
Legally Wooton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the name of the next one.
It's the what in the process.
Yes, that is what it's called.
Yeah, I was trying to remember the first word.
I've listened to both of those episodes.
It's value in the process. I just checked
value
a minute
in the process. Ago. Yes.
And we should also do the 2023 predictions next time for AIOC.
Are we done the OAC year?
No, I guess
we're not done the year yet.
That's true, but I mean, it's like it seemed in my mind. I was like, that'll be the best time to do them. But you're right. We should wait till we're done with 2022.
Good talk. Okay.
You're right. So we're only doing this 2 episodes next time. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Dr. Blackard.
And I'm so ready to nap.
And I'm ready to eat dinner. Okay, goodbye.